Today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing why traditions are necessary to cultivate your faith, your family, and your well-being. We're going to look at how modernity seems to downplay the importance of traditions and how traditions really are vital for our own spiritual and relational growth. We talk about how to start creating traditions today that will build memories that will last a lifetime. This is Season 1, Episode 17 of the podcast. I'm Casey Fletcher, and I'm excited for you to join me as we create a life we love and cultivate our hearts for God. Every year, after a get-together with good food and lots of fun and laughter, my family would all load up in the van on Christmas Eve. Because all my family lived close by, we would divide up our time around the holidays, visiting my mom's side on Christmas Eve and my dad's side on Christmas Day. When we would finally say goodbye, we would wrap ourselves in our coats and our hats and head off into the chilly air of a December night. If the weather was clear, my mom would point up to the sky and say, "Look close and see if you can see Santa's sleigh." And I would try to squint and find any specks of black amongst the backdrop of twinkling stars. When we arrived home, strings of lights adorned the porch and the roof, up to the tip-top of the high gables. Inside, we bring the magic of light into our living room as we turned on the Christmas tree before nestling together to open one gift before heading off to bed. Wrapped and placed underneath the tree was a package for me and each of my brothers, Christmas pajamas to wear as we waited for Christmas morning. Each portion of my time through the holidays is a special memory. My life looks very different now, but I cherish each of these memories. Both my parents have passed away, but I wonder how they felt about these times. Did they intentionally plan a magical time, or were they just passing on memories of their own childhoods? Whatever their reasons, these moments are what I remember from my childhood. The countless hours in school are forgotten. Sports, after-school activities, and piano lessons all blend and kind of mesh and mash together. But I often look back and smile at the times that we created these traditions, these precious memories. I'm sure that they had a lot on their plate as they wrapped the gifts, made the food, and decorated the house. But through their work, they created a childhood for me and my brothers that filled us with warmth and love. You know, wisdom is something that we're all working towards. Really, wisdom should be one of the primary goals of our life. One of the primary descriptions of wisdom is the fact that it comes with age. Gray hair is a crown of splendor, Proverbs 16:31 says. I think that one of the reasons why wisdom is developed with age is because we begin to see all the events in life through the perspective that is created after years of living. I've seen people say that after 3 kids, numbers really stop to matter. 4, 5, 6 kids, they're all about the same. Which, with each child, you begin to be able to weather some of the ebbs and flows of parenthood with more grace because you've been there before. I remember feeling so worried as a new mom of just one. I would check to see if my son was breathing at night multiple times, constantly worried that something would happen. But time went on, and I began to trust God more. When my daughter was born, I didn't do that. And it wasn't because I didn't care about my daughter. It was just that I had the wisdom to know that it would be okay, that every day would just come and go. And really, that wisdom was just created by time and experience. As children, we lack wisdom because of inexperience, sometimes hard-heartedness, and also just general foolhardiness. As we grow and we get jobs and families of our own, we begin to see the way that our parents acted, whether good or bad, in the experience that we have ourselves. And that's what makes me think. To make the holiday something of value for our family takes an effort that, as a child, I just didn't understand. I didn't truly appreciate or recognize the value of. Traditions. These holiday traditions, the Christmas traditions, even the back-to-school traditions or the traditions of the new year. Traditions make culture. And they also make a family with fond memories. They make relationships that share not only space, or maybe a house, or maybe even gifts, but relationships that share also connections that are built on years and years of faithfulness and consistency. Traditions are valuable, they are necessary, and they are important. I think about the state of our culture, and I think about it often. In college, I took a class on modernism, and the sentiment that pervaded most of the literature was the sense of breaking. The old, the ancient, the traditional, it was all broken for better or for worse. There was a sense that the future, which was always described as progress, with normally very positive connotations, the future was coming whether we were ready for it or not. W.B. Yeats wrote in 1919, "The center cannot hold." In all of this, there was a sense that what got us into the 20th century could not possibly see us out of it. And so these authors and these philosophers said we have to cast off any residual things that hold us back from this distinctly modern future. You can read the rest of his poem on the blog called The Second Coming. But one of the things he talks about is this idea of this beast that comes. The center cannot hold. There's this sense of breaking. And this beast, it says, "What rough beast, and its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born." In this, I think we see that Yeats is saying we have this kind of monster coming, this idea of modernity as a monster crouching towards Bethlehem. And the second coming is this idea of this modernity, this new birth. And I think as culture, we felt like everything old was done away with because of the Industrial Revolution. And so we've had this new birth. We think many times, and I think we still think this, even if it's subconsciously, but I think we think that we know more than the people of the past because we are so different and we live so differently from people of the past. Even though I really think that this is not the case. We can see in the aftermath of the 20th century, with the wisdom that we have, that this is a profoundly untrue statement. It wasn't this new, better thing that came in the 20th century. Really, it was kind of a chaos that erupted because of this new birth that modernity brought about. It has brought so many evils to the world. Abortion, war, the Holocaust, evil upon evil, simply because people thought that they could cast off the traditions and morality of the past in order to march into a future that they thought would be brighter and better. But we know that without Christ, there's no brighter and better. He's the light, and without him, the world lives in darkness. The 20th century and the first decades of this century have been a lesson in how the world lives without the guiding light that comes from Jesus. We are bumbling about in darkness without him. We think that we know better because of the difference in standard of living that technology has brought to our lives. Technology has become the god to many, but it's an idol all the same that leads to the emptiness and moral decay. In many ways, I think the sentiment of modernity was a period of foolhardy adolescence in American culture because we had scientific advancements and progress, in air quotes. We grew to believe that we knew more than God. We thought we were so profoundly different from the ancients of their past with the lack of central heating that we can never possibly learn from them. But I think now, just as teenage tantrums and rebellions fade into middle age with growing appreciation for our parents, I think we're kind of at a cusp of growing up in the midst of our culture. Now, this isn't true for any and everyone, but I think a select few of us are turning away from the hollow promises, the empty calories of this modern consumerist, materialistic life of impatience and frenetic hurry and activity. And we're turning towards more old-fashioned life of quiet habits and purposeful pursuits and intentional choices that connect us with the roots of the past. We're choosing instead to listen to generations that have come before and see the value of their wisdom. And really, this is the paradox of the modern age. We live off the fruits and wisdom and insights of the previous thousands of years of generations, all their ingenuities and their advancements and their inventions, and yet we deem them as backward and stupid because they lived in the past. And so we cast off everything that holds us back from the future. But really, the people of the past are not so different from us. And I think our modern technology and conveniences have not made us wiser than them, just more entitled and lazy. And also, I think sometimes we look at the things that they did and we think, oh, we don't have to do that anymore, so why should we? But we're finding that there's benefits for what they did that we are only starting to comprehend. The walking around everywhere keeps them fit. Working in a garden keeps them grounded. There are so many things that people did in the past that we've cast off, but we're finding that our mental health and our physical beings, everything is starting to decay because we have decided that we know better, but really it's turning out that we don't. So we're going to turn to the past and see what they've created that gave routine and meaning to their lives. And really one of the things that I think was crucial is this area of traditions. I have seen kind of the sentiment, and I think honestly it's in Christian culture as well. We have a lot of people that are choosing to, because of some of the trappings that come with Christmas time, whether it's because of consumerist and materialistic tendencies, so this kind of worldly influence on Christmas time. And also you have these other influences that basically are saying that Christmas has its origins not in a biblical standpoint, but more in a pagan standpoint. And you could see this with Easter and Halloween and all these other different elements. But basically they're saying we're not going to celebrate Christmas because of all of the stuff that Christmas has associated with it. And so they reject everything that goes with this tradition. And I see this not only with Christmas, but I see it with Easter and with other aspects of the church calendar, with other things that come and go as far as life goes with graduations and different things like that. It's like these people just decide they don't want to celebrate anything. They don't want to observe any traditions. And I think you're missing out on so much. There's a reason that for 2,000 years, and even before that, if you're looking at the Bible, God set up biblical feasts for the Jewish people to celebrate. So they also had their own traditions, and some of the traditions that were in the Jewish feasts, we also can see elements of them in our current Christian traditions. But basically, they're saying, we don't want any of these things. But ancient culture, they had these traditions for a reason. Traditions offered so many benefits. And so we're going to look at some of these benefits of traditions and think about why it's so important to celebrate these things. Why is all your effort at Christmas time, putting up the Christmas tree, decorating cookies, wrapping all these gifts, traveling to be with family, why is it important? And that's what we're going to focus on today, because it is. The benefits of traditions are manifold, and here are a few. So traditions, they create a common culture, both for your family and for a greater culture overall. Traditions, they help us feel connected with each other and with the past. Generally, they're tied to these times of celebrations and holidays. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. And because of this, those celebrations are connected with certain activities like feasting and activities like decorating a tree or caroling. So we pause in our busy lives and we connect with those around us. We know the importance of eating together as a family. I talked about that in our episode on family meal times. But I think in our current culture, we have de-emphasized that in our lives. We just don't have time set aside to really eat together. So for some of us, the holidays are the only time where we sit with our maybe even immediate family, but definitely our extended family, and sit and have a meal together. So traditions build a time in our schedule where we go back to kind of these ancient ways of living side by side, feasting, and doing life together. Many times around the holidays, that's really whenever you get to show that hospitality to one another, because maybe your extended family is traveling to stay with you. So you have people in your home, you're cooking together. And these are just things that used to be an everyday occurrence. But with modernization, we live such an uprooted lifestyle that we don't get to have that. We also see with traditions, it kind of connects us with the past. Family land and having these places where generations upon generations have lived in the same place, that's really kind of unheard of. Now people move around so much that we don't really have that connection to a place. But traditions can kind of provide that sense of connections, not only with our living immediate and extended family and friends, but also with the past. Because generally, whenever you're doing a tradition, you say, oh, this is what we did with the people that came before us. So one of the things I do every Christmas is we actually have two traditions that are kind of passed down. So one tradition is we make thumbprint cookies. And so that was a recipe that was like a great grandma's recipe, great-great-grandma's recipe of thumbprint cookies. So we make those every year. And so that was something that has been passed down. We also have a tradition that I don't think it was passed down, but it was something that we found online, and it kind of connects us back to like ancient heritage. So one of the things that German cultures they do is they have this pickle ornament, or at least this is what Disney's Epcot says. But basically you hide a pickle in the tree, and then a kid who finds it gets a prize. And so we have German ancestry, and so we started doing this. And this was something that my parents did. And again, it's been passed down now. So my parents are not living, but we can pass it down to the kids, and it just becomes something that you do. It's a shared family culture that also ties you back to the legacy of your family. You're learning, this is just what you do. This is what it means to be Fletcher, or this is what it means to be whatever your family is, which might be different than what I do as a family. I think traditions, they also, not only do they tie us with a shared culture, but they also reinforce a cyclical calendar. This is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Modernity has kind of infused life with a sense of progress. And progress means it's always moving forward, always doing something new. But really, that's not how life is set up. That's not how God has set up our years. Life is full of seasons that repeat. Seasons where we experience the same thing year after year. And I often wonder, why is this the case? Why did God set it up this way? So basically, we have this world where every year you have these seasons that come back. In the context of an agrarian society, you can think even about the way that, crops would grow or livestock would behave. So sheep, lamb in the spring, you have chicks that normally hatch in the spring. In the summer, you have the season of the garden. Fall brings harvest. So you have preserving, canning, pressing grapes, butchering, lots of feasting, and then you do it all over again. There are certain things we have chickens, and so in the springtime, in the summer, you have so many eggs, you don't even know what to do with. But if you don't use artificial light, your chickens will normally stop laying whenever it gets cold. And so you have these cyclical things in the year where you have an abundance of something, and then it changes and it goes away. But it happens the same time every year. But at the same time, you're also constantly getting older. Trees are getting taller. It's like the saying, same, but different. So modernity told us the lie that the cyclical calendar is not true, because factory work has no seasons and often no even real sense of night and day. So whereas a cyclical calendar, there's the same thing that happens, but there's a lot of space in between. And so you experience change all the time, but then you also experience this feeling of, well, we've came to this before and I know what to do. But factory work, you're doing a monotonous thing every day, but the only goal is to produce more and more and more efficiently. I think when we look at our homes and our families and our churches and our relationships, things that require more routine and not efficiency, we often feel defeated because they don't follow this factory protocol. But I think traditions remind us of the cyclical nature of relationships and things, that we're made for a cyclical calendar, not a factory calendar. We're made for times of feasting and times of work, times of seasons of cold and hot, for times of rest and times of growth, times of famine even, and sorrow, along with the joy and the celebration. I think traditions, they help us to mark time in a cyclical way. There is a season and a time for everything. And so we press into that with parenting. There are really good days and there's really bad days. But I think with the factory protocol, we kind of have this lie that things are always becoming better and bigger. But that's really not the case. It's one step forward, two steps back. But we learn that things, just like I said before with kids, you learn that, oh, I've been here before. And then you start to be able to navigate some of these things a little bit easier. And that leads us to our last couple points. So our next point is that traditions are a predictable expectation that you can look forward to. So just like I said, with seasons, you go through change. So right now, my son, who is 3, he's learning about how the weather changes because he wasn't, there's a big difference between a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so we've been talking about how now that summertime is done, we don't really get in the pool, it's getting cold. And then we experience how the leaves are changing in fall. And then we've been talking about how winter is normally cold and the sun is going down earlier. Some places get snow. And so he's experiencing all of this for the first time. But then I say, but then it'll be spring and it'll get warm again and we'll go to the beach and we'll swim in the pool. And so he's learning that, there's this change, but I have something to look forward to. I know what's going to come next. And so they begin to expect it. And so traditions provide that thing to look forward to, that thing to expect. And so what I call this is a predictable expectation. And that sounds kind of boring, to an adult. Like we don't want any predictable expectation. We want something new, something better, the next nice thing. But I think we need to understand, and I think we're the same way, even if we don't say it. Sometimes we like boring things too. But children really do like routine. I was listening to somebody and she was explaining the benefits of doing a regular hike on the same trail. And so she was saying really that can be super beneficial for kids to hike the same trail each week because children are able to grow in their ability to notice and appreciate the surroundings in a way that they couldn't if they were constantly doing a new trail. So providing predictable experiences, it's the same. And you could think of that analogy as like a trail, noticing different types of flowers and animals and different things like that. But that's really true for, all of life. If you give children the same experiences, they can begin to notice the nuances of those experiences and become more confident in what they're doing. They know how to do it. And because of that, they can use their brain power to look more deeply at what they're doing. And so I think traditions, they provide just the right mix of being different enough while also being special and memorable. So children normally look forward to these traditions, but at the same time, they can expect what is going to happen. We're going to go see the lights on this night. We're going to eat with our family on this night. We're going to decorate the tree on this day. And so then they start to ask questions. Well, why are we decorating the tree? What is this ornament for? And you can begin to tie in some of your family traditions, some of your family story, and also the story of God. And so that predictable expectation, it's necessary to use traditions to teach this story to your children. And that is our last point, is that traditions, they create the sensory collective story that your child is learning, and then someday they'll pass on to their children. So as a child, I remember playing with a ceramic nativity set. It was kind of like this breakable set. So I had to be really gentle as I would lay baby Jesus in the manger with Mary and Joseph watching over them. A lot of times I would place the wise men off in faraway lands, and they'd have to travel ever so slowly with camels in tow towards the manger. So we would go across the fireplace and try to make it to the tree skirt. Angels would appear and shepherds would rejoice, and the gifts would be presented. And I still remember that cold, kind of slightly scratchy feeling of the figurines and the sound of their tapping on the fireplace bricks. At this time, I was only 5, but I still vividly remember the sounds and the feel. And that's not to mention these other things that I remember from that time. This tradition of setting out the nativity scene underneath a tree created the backdrop of instilling the story of Jesus' birth into my mind. Through all of the things that we did over Christmas, I was cultivating what it meant to be a Christian, of the joy and wonder at the birth of our Savior. In a manger, surrounded by shepherds, watching the true shepherd of our souls. Through the smell of cookies and evergreen trees, the sounds of Christmas carols and the crackling fire, the sights of lights twinkling, and maybe even your favorite Christmas movie. Christmas is truly a rich and sensory experience that combines into a story that gets passed from person to person, parent to child. And really, all traditions can provide this sensory experience with a little bit of intentional planning. So, how do you add the habit of celebrating traditions into your life? Maybe you're one of those people that before you thought, really, what's the use? All these traditions, it's just a lot more work. There's no point in them. But then you see, well, no, there's a lot of benefits to traditions that are important, that are a good reason why we need to continue to practice the habit of adding these traditions into our life. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to pick a time of year that lends itself to the celebration and the story. For most of the time, it'll be pretty self-evident. We'll probably pick a time that's around a holiday or the beginning or ending of a season. So you might do Christmas, Easter, it could be fall, summer, beginning of the school year, ending of the school year, or birthdays, anniversaries. And then as you think about this time, you should think about the story that you want to pass down. What do you want to teach during this time? What does this time show about God or your family culture? What kind of character traits do you want to connect to this time to pass down? Again, traditions, because they happen year after year, even after your kids are grown, or even after you in 10 years, if you're practicing these traditions, and let's say you've connected generosity to the Christmas season, every year around Christmas, you're emphasizing this character trait. So again, it becomes something that becomes like a trigger where you remember, oh, this is what this is about. Just like we talk about with Christmas, it's a good opportunity to remember the birth of Jesus. There's a lot of other things that you can tie to, whether it's a holiday or it could be a birthday or something like that, where you use that tradition as a trigger to think about an element of your life that you want to emphasize. You can also think about what that tradition teaches about the world. For some, the story that the tradition tells will be tied to an ancient culture. But for other types of traditions and holidays, you are writing the story as you're creating the tradition. So it could be that you're going to make up your own thing, and this is something that just you do. Maybe it's a family reunion. That's something that I know we do, and that's not something that, every person under the sun says, oh, we're going to celebrate an extended family reunion around September 20th or something like that. But if you do, then you can create the traditions around that family reunion and also tell the story. And it just requires you to be a little bit intentional. Maybe you already have a date on the calendar where you say, hey, our family gets together around this time. But then think about what could you do at that family reunion that would teach your family's story and help to emphasize certain things about what it means to be a part of your family. So this is where you really need to start to brainstorm how to add activities and routines that help you to celebrate that time and disciple you and your children. We know that Christmas has become laden with this, materialistic vibe. Practically every Christmas movie and song is about remembering the reason for the season while simultaneously talking about all the gifts that you are going to receive. As you look at the time you chose to add traditions, think about what you could cultivate during this time. For instance, again, if you are thinking about Christmas and Christmas traditions, you should try to use this time, obviously, to celebrate Jesus' birth and teach yourself and your children about why the gift of Christ was necessary and wondrous and impactful, both then and now. As you determine the purpose of your traditions, then you can figure out how to use your traditions to speak to this. So if you're trying to teach the story of Christ's birth, you probably at Christmas time want to be gathering up books and stories about the birth of Christ, maybe some nativity sets. You want to include reading the Bible into your day, maybe singing Christmas carols, and all of those things can be helpful with that. Let's say you also, around this time, you want to try to teach the characteristics of love and kindness and generosity to your family. In that sense, then you can remember, okay, this is what I'm trying to teach. So whenever you watch a Christmas movie or you read a book, think about how you can explain the way that the characters did or did not show love to one another. Building in time for service and hospitality can also cultivate the sense of community and generosity. So it can be helpful around times where you already have a lot of things going on. I think all of us have traditions that we do at Christmas time, whether we even want to celebrate Christmas or not. It can be helpful to write down what you've done in the past, whether that's as a child or something that you've kind of picked up along the way since you've been married or have had kids, and just write down everything that you do. For some of those things, again, it's going to be things that you've chosen. Some things are things that you thought would be good. Some things are things that you feel like you have to do because you've done them since you were born. Some things are things that you've been told to do because of your church or your school. And so write down each of those traditions and then think about, okay, what am I trying to do with this tradition? What am I trying to teach with this tradition? How does it help me to celebrate Christmas or celebrate Easter? And then as you do that, you need to evaluate whether each tradition is life-giving and purposeful and whether the tradition really is beneficial. There are some traditions that definitely can lead you away from God and with connections with others and a lack of a sense of joy. Sometimes it's because the tradition itself is just not very good, but a lot of times I would say most traditions that we have already are things that are good, but it could be that you have too many and that they're not purposeful. So your kids, you might be saying, oh yeah, we've always done this, but I don't really know why. And so you might need to evaluate. And you could do one of two things. You could stop doing the tradition, or you could say, we do this for this purpose. So if it's something that you do, you would use that time not only to do the actual activity, but to also tell the story of why you do that thing. One thing that our church does, this is kind of unique, and I haven't really heard of people doing this, but we have a Christmas program at church for the adults, and they sing and have a little drama and stuff. But every year before, during the dress rehearsal for it, we get together at the church and we pack a whole bunch of fruit bags. We probably pack at least 100. And so there's bananas and chocolate bar, some pecans, apples. And so we do this. And it's one of those things that's well, why do we do this? Because we give away the fruit bags at the Christmas program that Sunday night. But really, it was because during the Great Depression, I think, there wasn't very much, fresh fruit and nuts and things like that to go around. And so the church got together some fresh fruit and some, treats and stuff, and they would pass out these fruit bags. And so, for me, that is something that actually, instead of it being something like, well, why do we do this? This is just an extra thing that you have to do. Instead, it tells the story of, a church coming together during a difficult time and helping serve one another. And so now as you do that, you're remembering this time where the church kind of rose to the occasion in the community, and you're reminded to be the same way. And again, that's an example of a tradition that creates this culture and this story that you can pass down. Now I could teach my son, who is born almost 100 years after the Great Depression, and I can tell him about this time in the past where the church family did that. And then we can also think about how, old the church is, this legacy that we have. And so that's what I mean. You don't have to get rid of the traditions, but you're more mindful. And that requires you saying, okay, this is why we do this thing, and telling your kids, telling your family that, telling your friends that this is why we do it. Once you've figured out all of this stuff, the purpose behind it, what you want to do, then you just have to do the tradition, which is easier said than done. All too often, we have great plans to make memories with our kids at the beginning of the season, and then we turn around and it's already time to pack away our decorations. And our bucket list doesn't have one thing marked off, and we feel regret and sadness. We don't feel like it's Christmas or fall or Easter. If this sounds like you, there's a few things that you can do to help make the most of each season you're in. Once you've brainstormed what you want to do over the course of a season, it's important to go ahead and make a plan for actually doing those things. So in the fall, I had high hopes. I was going to go apple picking and go to a sunflower patch and go to fall festivals and go see the leaves change and go to the mountains. But really, I didn't do any of those things. I made a list of, wouldn't it be great if we did this? And that's the last thing. That's the last step I did. I never moved forward. The fall activities I did do, like the pumpkin picking and decorating and fall festivals, were done because I coordinated with somebody else and I made a plan to do that. So for Advent, I changed my plan of attack. Instead of just doing a bucket list of all the things I think, yeah, that'd be nice to do, what I've done is I've created a plan of attack where I am doing those things every day. So this is what I do around Christmas time. This is kind of a new tradition that helps me to add in all of my other traditions and also makes it easy for planning. So around the middle of November, I printed out a calendar and I wrote down all the activities we were doing. Again, a lot of this is stuff that's already planned for you. So I know I'm getting together with my family around Christmas time and a little bit after Christmas. And I know we have our church programs and various things like that. And so I brainstormed, in addition to this, I brainstormed some of the things that I'd like to do. So my list looks something like this: cookie decorating, manger scene, Christmas lights, Polar Express Day, which was the night before Christmas, and Christmas pajamas, holiday trees at the park, Advent calendar. And then I also made a list of a couple other things that I wanted to do. I do a Christmas preschool, which basically means I have a list of Christmas books and carols and crafts that we do in the week. And so what I've done is I heard about this idea on the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. And basically, it's an alternate version of an Advent calendar. So for each day of the month, you unwrap a present or a book or write down an activity and maybe put it in a note card that you want to do. And every morning you open that thing. So again, it could be unwrapping a gift or maybe opening an envelope. And so what I've done is I've wrapped Christmas school books, some Christmas DVDs, a few extra pairs of pajamas, and a couple toys and blocks, kinetic sand and Play-Doh and stuff. And so one of their activities that we're doing with Christmas school is we actually made donuts. And so I even wrapped a couple of donut pans, and then I put all of this stuff in a laundry basket. So I wrapped all the presents in November, and I put a number on each of the presents. So, a number 1, a number 2. I got this like Christmas advent calendar that has a little figurine for each day of the Advent season. So it has 24 little like figurines. And so on the first day of December, my son and my daughter unwrapped that present, and now they get to open up one piece. And the thing about this that I like, there's a lot of things that I like about this, is the first is that I don't do Elf on the Shelf or really any of those other things. And so like this is my daily countdown to Christmas. This is my Advent calendar. I like that I wrapped everything before, because basically now I have no wrapping for Christmas as far as my family goes. Like it's all wrapped. Occasionally I'll think of something, I might order something on Amazon, but this is everything. And also because of this, they're getting like maybe 1 or 2 presents on Christmas morning, but nothing else. So there's not a lot of little toys, little trinkets, clothes and things like that. We're not really doing a big Christmas morning. And so these things that they're getting throughout the month are their gifts. So making donuts for my son is a gift that he should appreciate. And so that is his Christmas present for the day. And then also it's something that's useful for later on. So family gifts can be added into this. There also are a couple things that I've already owned that I wrapped. So I didn't go out and buy 24 different things. I had some Christmas books already from last year. And so I actually wrapped those, and they were added to the laundry basket. So if you have Christmas DVDs or Christmas books, you can rewrap those things, especially if your kids are young, because my son doesn't remember anything that we did last year. And so it seems like a new thing, but I think with this, it adds this element of everything that you get is special. You get these books, you get maybe, something related to a manger scene, maybe a Christmas ornament for your family. All of those things are special. You've bought them, and so there's something that should be appreciated. And so just that one extra step of wrapping the gift helps to add to, the specialness of the whole season. I also have heard of other people that do this. They do like a book advent calendar. They've even gotten library books. So again, you don't have to spend a lot of money to do this, because again, it could be that you print off some Christmas coloring pages or something like that. Or again, you do a craft. And so basically what you're doing is, it's not that you're spending money on all of these things, but what you're doing is you're trying to reinforce that this time is special, and also that the stuff that you do with your family is a gift, and they should appreciate it like a gift. I think this also can kind of cut down on some of, on Christmas, a lot of times, like you have such anticipation for Christmas morning as a kid. And even for yourself as you grow up, that you can look forward to it. And then even if you get everything that you want, it's like that anticipation, just like physically, like you're so excited, and then you kind of crash, even if you got everything that you wanted. And so I think this kind of avoids that. You're not looking just to Christmas morning for all of the gifts. Advent is a season, and it's a season to be celebrated. I've heard other people, one of the lady that mentioned this, she actually got like concert tickets, and she added that. And she would do like a manicure for her and her daughter. One of the things that I'm going to do in a couple weeks is there's like this putt-putt thing where you can go and they have Christmas lights up. That's going to be one of the, I'm going to put that little envelope, and that's going to be one of our Christmas days. Another day I have planned, driving around to go see Christmas lights. So that is going to go in the Christmas envelope. So the other thing that this does is it helps you to make sure that you are hitting all of the things on your bucket list, because you're being reminded on every day. You've gotten into the habit of opening up a gift, so you're reminded of the thing that you need to do. So I've been more successful with doing this stuff for my traditions. So the Christmas Advent calendar, again, it's just one example of a tradition that's really relatively small, because again, I didn't buy all the new stuff. A lot of this stuff was stuff I already owned. I just wrapped it. So it's relatively small, with a little bit of planning and wrapping, and a few minutes each day of unwrapping and maybe reading or doing the activity. But over the course of the month, it's yielded so many benefits, and it's reinforced this idea of this is what we're doing. This is the story. And so every day my son says, "Are we going to do my nativity?" That's what he calls it. And so I think it's a nice thing to be able to do, because it just reinforces so many traits and good characteristics. So some other traditions that you could start adding to your life could be Christmas Eve traditions. So I've heard of doing a shepherd's feast. So this is like a feast that the shepherds would do, so kind of like a quick meal on Christmas Eve. We do a Christmas Eve service at church too. That's like a candlelight service. You could also do the Feast of the Seven Fishes. That's what actually our family does, is you have different types of seafood. I think it's a Catholic thing. And so we do that, and it's always super yummy. New Year's Eve tradition. So we always eat Chinese food and do fireworks and watch the ball drop. And it's actually become a big thing that lots of people from our church do too. So that's one tradition that's just kind of particular to our family. But you can think of any kind of New Year's Eve traditions or New Year's Day traditions. So watching the Rose Parade, eating black-eyed peas and collards is a Southern thing to do. You could also think about as the year goes on, you're like, okay, well, this is great. Christmas traditions, because we're in the middle of Christmas season. But what if you're listening to this later, or just thinking about, most of the year from January till about October, there's no traditions until Halloween comes around. Well, there's actually a lot of times throughout the year that you could add things into your schedule. So again, thinking about Lenten traditions and Holy Week, Good Friday, and Easter traditions, from discussing, the Passion of the Christ to celebrating with Easter eggs and resurrection eggs. We always did as a kid, we did an Easter basket scavenger hunt on the morning of Easter. And so we also do a sunrise service at church. I was listening to another podcast, and one of the ladies was talking about celebrating the church calendar. So everything from Epiphany to Pentecost, St. Nicholas Day, All Saints Day, or Reformation Day. There's lots of other things throughout the year that you can celebrate and teach to your kids. And it makes it to where it's not like, oh, we remember Jesus at Christmas and at Easter and not the rest of the time. It's no, every day you are using the calendar year, to teach something about Christ. You can also celebrate national holidays. So Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, Memorial and Veterans Day, Labor Day, 4th of July. Again, most of these things, we celebrate them. You might get together with your family, go to the lake, maybe go camping. But think about what you could teach to your child during this time. Whether it's, thinking about the sacrifice of, for Memorial Day and Veterans Day, acts of service for MLK Day, Labor Day, you could think about teaching them about work and rest and doing that from a biblical standpoint. 4th of July, you could talk about freedom, independence. Many of these holidays can be a point where we discuss their meaning and history, which can give much more meaning and richness to all of these holidays. It creates that memory. And so it's just something where you have to be intentional of not just saying, oh, this is a day off from work, but also using that to teach your children something. Sally Clarkson actually celebrates a family day. So on this day, they have breakfast together and they celebrate each other. So they actually go around. They do this for birthdays too, I think, which I think this is a great idea. And I kind of want to bring it to my family. But basically what they do is they go around the table and they share a memory of the past year and how proud they are of each other because of how someone has grown over the year. Basically, they're just kind of remembering what has happened that year. For birthdays, you could do the same thing. So you go around the table and share, like everybody shares about the person who's celebrating the birthday, something that they like about that person, which it could be awkward maybe the first time you do it, but I think it makes it special. I've realized that a lot of times, as you get older, I'll say, hey, you want to, go out to eat or go somewhere to celebrate somebody's birthday, and you kind of go and it's like every other day. But what if you are more purposeful where you're celebrating that person? So you're not just like hanging out, but you're celebrating and connecting with one another. And that is something that's memorable instead of just being another day. And so I think we could all be better about this. So again, it's just something that's small, yet over the years, it brings memories of expectation, joy, and connection. So if you want to have more ideas, if you're like, okay, well, this is great, but maybe nothing really struck your fancy, maybe you're still looking for something, there are a lot of great books and blogs and things like that to help add more traditions to both your holidays, and then also think of like other random days to have traditions on throughout the year. So one book that has excellent recommendations, and I recommend it to anybody who's interested in this, is Memory Making Mom by Jessica Smart. So she does a great job she has memories, she has traditions for all throughout the year. And so if you want to have something that's maybe not related to holidays, because your holidays are already super busy, but you want to add more traditions to your year, you can check out her book. Life Giving Home is the same thing. That's by Sally and Sarah Clarkson. They also have traditions and memory-making moments for the entire year. You can also learn about the church calendar through Amy Roberts. She's at raisingarrows.net. And her guide, she has a guide that's called Celebrating the Church Calendar as a Protestant. So if you click on the show notes, that will take you to the blog post for this podcast. And then all of those links are in that blog post. So I really encourage you to check that out. Traditions, they help make our faith stronger, and they also provide so many opportunities to connect with others, to create memories that are going to last a lifetime, and to disciple our children. They are worth all of the effort that we put into them as they pass on the legacy of faith to the next generation. What are some traditions that you're currently cultivating, whether for Advent or for a different time in the year? Comment below with what you're doing. I would love to add some new traditions to my year. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and blog, and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts to help others find the show. I'm Casey Fletcher, and I hope you'll join me next week for the next episode. Until then, keep creating a life you love and cultivating your heart for God.